You're listening to Second Cut. This is the weekly podcast where we talk about topics in film history, theory, criticism, the industry, whatever else we talk about, because it's fun to do. I'm Jacob, and I'm the one who wants a pearl dagger. I didn't come up with something.
I'm Sam, and I'm the one who thinks it's really amusing to make fortunate men taste the same misery as the unfortunate.
I'm Kieran. I'm the one doing a second Shakespeare adaptation in how many weeks? Like, Forbidden Planet, and now I'm here again. Like, I mean, at least I had several to choose from this time.
Yeah,
That's true.
I mean, Kurosawa, he did like doing Shakespeare adaptations, didn't he? I think he did 4 over his career.
3.
Brown of Blood,
and Big Sleepwell. Bad Sleepwell is based on Hamlet.
Oh, right, okay, so 3. Yeah.
There you go.
It's regarded that there's 3. There's probably elements in others elsewhere, along with Dostoevsky and Tolstoy and all that kind of thing. But yeah, nominally 3.
I think the guys in Hidden Fortress, the comical commoners who become the droids in Star Wars, I think they're like Shakespeare characters or like archetypes.
Well, Falstaff and like some of the others that occasionally pop up. Yeah, Servant 1 and Servant 2. No, they're thingy. Is it who is it? And Balthazar at the start of Romeo and Juliet, who essentially Romeo and Juliet begins with essentially going like two sides of two warring families going, I have bigger members than you do. It's just like, what the hell? This escalates from nowhere. Yeah, literally is. But yeah, so this is where we are.
Yeah. We're finally getting to Kurosawa after how many years we've been doing this podcast now?
Over 4, I think.
Yeah, and he is like a big name, obviously, in film history. You know, if you're talking about like in cinephile circles, he's the most prominent Japanese director. I mean, I'm sure probably anybody who's seen.
It's between him and Ozu, isn't it? Really, depending on your.
I mean, I would say unless you're a cinephile, you probably don't know Ozu because you probably only watched Tokyo Story to say that you've watched Tokyo Story because it's on all the lists. I would probably say the 2 are Kurosawa and Miyazaki.
Yeah, I was thinking Miyazaki.
After that, you might go Ozu. You might go somebody like Takashi Miike, because if you're cinephile, you're probably also a little bit in the horror scene as well. So you may go somebody like Miike just because of his output. And then I think it probably is depending on where you get to. Just for his influence, I did start reading an actual book, but then I decided to spend most of my time watching more Kurosawa movies. Because I'd seen maybe 3 or 4 of them, and now I've marathoned about 8 in 2 days. But Peter Wilde, in his book, Akira Kurosawa, so I read the first sort of 10, 12 pages or so, but in it he notes a thing from Francis Ford Coppola, who apparently, this is what he wrote, the quote is, most directors have 1 film for which they are known, or possibly 2, Francis Ford Coppola said. Akira Kurosawa has 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And you think about that and you go, yeah, pretty much that's the issue. Like there's some, like if you went through, you'd probably go 7 Samurai, Rashomon, Yojimbo, High and Low, Bad Sleep Well, Ran, you know, more keep them coming. You know, there are a Stray Dog maybe as well.
Yeah, I mean, he did 16 with Toshiro Mifune alone, you know. Yeah. So.
And I certainly don't want to discount the breadth of his work. He made movies for 60 years, from the 30s or 40s into the 90s, and
so he started making propaganda films essentially during the war. So I think from 42, 43, he was making films for the Japanese kind of war office or whatever they were called.
Well, and not to discount all of that, but I think what particularly stands out for him, to me, as a person who likes movies and his movies is his sort of conversation with the West and the way that he sort of brought Japanese filmmaking to Western, mainstream like festivals and the maybe not necessarily the audiences, but the critics and the people who were into movies. They were hearing about him and wanting to see his stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and I've always fascinated by, as you said, the conversation with the West, in terms of how he kind of swapped genres and influences back and forth. So he was a big fan of the old American westerns.
Yeah,
and
his favorite director was John
you know,
Ford. So
yeah, and then in turn, Western filmmakers, Sergio Leone ends up remaking his films, and then
yeah.
and then again,
Magnificent Seven.
it's like a second remake further down the line. Yeah. I mean,
mean,
actually, Sergio Leone with his Dollars films, they were very unauthorized versions of Sanjuro and Jimbo.
I mean, you watch again Kurosawa's, especially obviously his samurai films, and most of them, because of the kind of weird way I think Japanese landscape works. You look at it sometimes, there's like a desert in there. Do we have deserts in Japan? I don't know. I think of them as like just mountains or Tokyo, and that's about it. But it's like because of all that, you'll have kind of like standoffs like in Yojimbo or something like that in the middle of some peasant town in the middle of like pretty much a plain or a desert, and all you have to do is put a tumbleweed going across and it is a western. There is no change. It is insane. There's pretty much no difference. And some of the music, the very minimalist thing, is kind of almost like the kind of Morricone style music going in there.
I like the way, obviously, Sergio Leone was very influenced by how the action scenes were edited and everything like that. I mean, there's very little difference between the way Kurosawa would film a sword fight between Ronin and samurai. It's how Leone would film a shootout. It's just the kind of the camera falling, the hand going to the weapon, and then fast cuts, and then like the carnage like rolling out from that. It's fascinating just the breadth of his influence really on the industry around the world.
And he's also obviously concerned with sorry, Kieran, go ahead.
No, I was just going to comment. I used to have a go at George Lucas for kind of putting the wipes on everything and therefore almost ruining Ghosts of Mars by John Carpenter, because every time there's a wipe there, I want to shoot the screen. But now, obviously, it's Kurosawa that's behind it all. Again, having like marathon 7 or 8 Kurosawa movies in a row over the last 2 days. I did Rashomon a few days ago, and I've done Ran, High and Low, Hidden Fortress, Stray Dog, Yojimbo. I've done Bad Sleep as well today. It's like I don't think I've seen as many wipes in my life in such a short space of time. And the thing is now, it's kind of Star Wars has actually, I think, ruined the wipe. Because now you can't do it. You can't do it because it's cheesy, and you'll just think of Star Wars and just think you're ripping off Star Wars when he's just ripping off Kurosawa. Like you can't get it. Kurosawa was the last proper auteur that could do it properly outside of one franchise and get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, George Lucas did it because he loved Hidden Fortress, and New Hope, plot-wise, is basically Hidden Fortress in space, isn't it?
I mean, the two main characters are.
I'll just take all the style. I'll just take and he got an old slightly mad warrior, and and a dreamy, a kid with dreams, and a princess in peril. It's all there. I mean, they're very established tropes, but it's literally that story, and he brought all those stylistic kind of flourishes with it as well.
The gold becomes the plans for the Death Star,
And that's what's interesting about Kurosawa is he borrows all that stuff from whether he's adapting Shakespeare or Dostoevsky, who, I mean, I guess is more Western than Eastern. Russia's a weird one. But he's adapting their stuff. Yeah. He's watching John Ford. In the documentary I watched, which was a message from Akira Kurosawa for beautiful movies, which his daughter had a hand in. He, like, growing up, watched Dr. Caligari, and he watched, classic silent films, and like I said, watched John Ford. And so that's the influence that he's bringing in, but then he transforms it to Japanese modern society, Japanese history, the customs and the problems going on in society. Like he's able to take it and make it meaningful for his culture in a way that, like, anytime I see somebody talk about Rashomon, which we'll get to, they're like, oh, it's about the truth. But like, it's also about Japanese culture specifically and that point in time and stuff, and not necessarily a universal thing.
And it's a Japanese culture that he was kind of almost uniquely connected to, because he is, and I only found this out doing research, because Kurosawa is one of those people that, a lot of times you just go, oh, they're directors and they're kind of outside of any kind of familial history and all things like that. But within like 2 or 3 generations, he's descended from a line of samurai. Like, it's insane. And I'm just like, what? He apparently traces his culture back to like the 11th. I can't remember when it. Family tree traced back to Abe Sadako, an 11th century warrior. Like, it's insane. Like, so when he's kind of, as has been brought up by lots of critics, one of the documentaries I watched about an hour ago that was streamed on the Arts channel in the UK. And by the way, I'm just going to do a very quick plug for anyone that's in the UK in universities or knows people in universities in the UK. Please tell them to use the Boxer Broadcast service if their university is subscribed to it, because it's literally probably about 20 or 30 channels in the UK that are kind of on TV. All their recordings get saved there. So I was watching most of my Kurosawa movies that were on there with adverts in it from like Film 4 or BBC at the start and things like that. So please use it. It is essentially an archive for 10 years of TV. But on this thing, they were going, sort of everything that he does, it's not ancient history for him. It is actually quite close family that he's drawing upon. And he was born in 1910. I mean, the movies that is a lot of the samurai films are right at the end of kind of the samurai period. The samurai, when's the last in sort of like 1860, 1870, I think, like that. So it's just before that. His grandfather, aware of it, he'd probably heard these tales passed down to him, so he has close familial connections. And so when everyone goes, oh, this is ancient samurai Japan, it's not. It is as near to living history for him as you can get.
I mean, it's kind of interesting again about genres and how they blend together, that because a lot of the classic American westerns, they're set in the very end of the Old West. It's like the way we think about like the Old West, it's that just like a 20-year period, like after the Civil War, basically. It's just, there's not really much outside that. And similar with Kurosawa stuff, it's, as you say, it's at the end of the kind of samurai era. It's not like the medieval like shogunate or anything. It's later than that, as you say. It's very, very specific to his, as you say, to his family history and to his kind of the kind of stories he relates to on a personal level.
He also lived through 4 eras of Japanese history, which I don't know exactly how they denote that, but
they denote it by the emperor. So basically, I think he saw 4 emperors.
There you go, and made propaganda for one of them.
Yeah, because
that was very quickly. That's
why the gods. I was going to say that's why the Godzilla eras have got the names they have, because they're named after the emperors who were around when they were made.
I will say with the propaganda film, what was it? The most beautiful or something like that. That was his second film, and the reason for that was the first film he made. He kind of apparently he was doing a bit of thankfully, although this documentary I watched, most of it, like a lot of documentaries that are kind of part of serials on various people, what they do is they have about 10 minutes of introduction, then just spend about 2 minutes on each film. Just play the highlight reel sort of thing. But the first 5-10 minutes is quite interesting. So he in 1923 he goes through a big earthquake in Tokyo, and he's got an older brother, Higo, who's walking around through Tokyo and seeing the devastation. And apparently Akira was looking away, and his brother said to him essentially along the lines of, never look away from what you're afraid of, you have to look it in the eye. And apparently that was very influential for him. Higo's kind of a mentor figure, and you kind of see that in his later films. Kind of, there's an awful lot of darkness in Kurosawa films, along with the big epic stuff. But his brother commits suicide in 1933. I think it is, when he's sort of 23, and he's very despondent about that. And so, that stays with him, and he's going painting and stuff like that, and that falls through. And he eventually sees an advertisement for a film processing plant, I think it was. And to go for an interview, he had to answer a question: how do you think that the fundamental problems in the Japanese film industry could be improved? And apparently his response was, if the problems are fundamental, they can't be improved. Which is the most greatest answer I've ever heard. That got him like interviews. A director, Yamamoto, who must have been some director I haven't heard of, but I'm not massively up on Japanese cinema, who's kind of an influence on him, and got in various roles in different things. He was doing bits of editing, bits of camera, and all that kind of thing. But then one of the things that gets him his first film, very quickly coming to it. Sorry, I actually took notes for this one for the first time in ages. He sees the release of a book, Sanshiro Sugata, on its day of release. And he picks it up, reads it, and convinces the studio to get the rights to it. They get the rights to it. 2 or 3 days later, 2 or 3 other studios try and get the rights for it. So he was very quick off the mark and got it for him. And kind of as a result of that, he gets allowed, okay, you've done all this stuff, you got the rights, make the film. And it's kind of like a martial arts thing. And it did quite well, but it was kind of censored a bit, bearing in mind this is like, what is it, 1941, 42, something like that. So essentially the government and the people told him, in order for you to keep working, you have to make us a propaganda film, which is why he made Most Beautiful. So he did make kind of propaganda films, and the idea that kind of, especially in Japan, you're happiest when you're working as part of the society and working for their greater good, being the salaryman or whatever and things like that. But that is essentially because he was like, I have to do this, otherwise I'm going to be kicked out of the industry, and I've only just made it in here. So it's kind of just a step that you had to get through in order to go further on and make his other films. Sorry, I know that was a long-winded get there, but I was like, once I started, I might as well go through all my notes on Kurosawa and his upbringing.
At least in the he talked about in the 90s that essentially his process was, I don't know about at the beginning, but by the swing of his career, he's storyboarding out, the entire film, and he's writing in dialogue, kind of like making a comic of it. And you can see his like painter background, just come on the screen.
Yeah. I mean, I did a bit of research on this when I wrote my piece for the film magazine on his collaborations, with Mifune, and he basically essentially almost had like his team around him, his team of faithfuls, various creatives who he just worked with in film after film. And they basically almost like a writer's room, basically just firing ideas at each other, and working their way through story problems and stuff. And nothing they never started filming until the script was absolutely ready, because like Hitchcock always believed, the script was the most important aspect of making a good film. And I say kind of his visuals being such an important kind of aspect of most distinctive aspects of his kind of filmmaking style. It's kind of cruelly ironic. They started to go blind, towards the end of his life and career. He made the move into color, finally in the 70s. But then made 4 or 5 more films all in color after that. And it was basically by the end he couldn't really see that much. Good job his colors were so vivid by that point, the process, because he could just about work out still what he was going for just by general shapes. But he couldn't see detail or anything by then. So it's kind of interesting that he held off, moving into color filmmaking for so much longer than a lot of his contemporaries did, and that's probably key to why he could still, being a visual effects filmmaker in his later years, when he couldn't see that much anymore.
Yeah. Whenever I listened to like the commentary track for, I think, High and Low, because that's 1960, and the guy said he shot it in black and white because he knew how to light for that, even though like everybody's doing color.
He didn't think they were ready for color yet. So he didn't have experience with doing that effectively. Although he does get one bit of color in the film at a key point, which is kind of interesting.
Admittedly, I was watching that and I saw that and went, the Scorsese beam, absolute cinema.
Yeah.
I just saw it and I'm like, oh, that's genius and beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, do it just
Yeah,
once,
very
and
well,
it's. I want to know if that.
very well
We'll get
deployed.
to it
Yeah.
later, but yeah. But yeah, so going before Rashomon, he does a couple of films going up. Nothing really captures the success of Sashiro Sugata. But then sort of 48, 49, especially I think Stray Dog is one of the ones that kind of makes him a major success and pretty much invents the police
Yeah.
procedural, people have argued.
Yeah. I mean, he meets his two muses basically in the late 40s. You know, so obviously Toshiro Mifune, but also Takashi Shimura. You know, most famous. You know, from Seven Samurai, but also from the first Godzilla film, and just using those two as his like key figures. You know, in his acting ensemble. And they did a series of crime and cop films with them. Essentially, yes, he had Drunken Angel, and then he had Stray Dog, you know, in quick succession. Then short after that, you also had the Silent Duel, or Quiet Duel, as it's sometimes known, which was a bit more of like it's like a melodrama, but sort of still set in that post-war period, like covering the same issues. But you know, Mifune plays a surgeon who contracts a blood-borne disease. Basically, he's trying, you know, while performing surgery, cuts his hand, and he has to basically keep that from his wife. And there's a few kind of melodramas and things like that he does in that period. But yeah, I think this era is definitely his crime film era primarily.
I should.
He couldn't move on to doing what he's passionate about. He couldn't move on to the samurai film straight away because they were still banned at this point in the middle of post-war, because they were thought of as you kind of glorifying violence, and that wasn't what the Americans wanted to happen in the nation they'd so recently defeated.
Because he is pressured into doing a sequel to Sanhiro Sugata. But he gets it, and then the Americans come in and say you can't release this, so it's banned for another 7 years.
Have we covered? Yeah, have we covered this before? Is that the first sequel with a number in the title?
Possibly yes, because you reckoned the release kind of main thing was Quatermass 2, didn't you?
Yeah.
But also, we should note that actually during this period, I would suggest in Walking on Most Beautiful, he actually meets the third kind of partner in his life, which is his wife, Yoko Yaguchi, who is brought in because apparently Kurosawa already by this point is being a bit of a diva director, because he's essentially making all the cast and crew live and eat and sleep in the factory that he's doing the documentary on. And she was brought in as part of kind of the producing, the censorship, kind of all those boards, and essentially clash with them and try to get them better treatment. And it's like, well, they must have had a pretty good clash, because after this, they get married in 1945. The thing goes on, she dies in 85. As far as I know, they don't get a divorce. So have two sons and goes for 40 years. So maybe it was worth it treating these people very badly by keeping them.
I mean his relationship with Mifune, which I mean, literally they're absolutely made for each other, because it was literally unstoppable force meets immovable objects. They got the best out of each other, but it was a very kind of fractious relationship. And obviously after almost 20 years working together, they reached an impasse. It's like, yep, this can't go any further. We can't keep doing this. We're going to kill each other if we keep going like this. And Kurosawa quite often he said, you know, because he was a perfectionist and he didn't want to move creatively for anything. It's like this was his vision. You know, it's my way or the highway. But Mifune just ignored him basically. So I think he talked about just pointing him in the right direction basically, because he was just a whirlwind. He was a force of nature. So I'll kind of use reverse psychology. I'll trick him into thinking this isn't what I want to do, but I know he will do that out of spite, and that's what the end result I want. So it was interesting.
I find it interesting that
dynamic,
because Mifune went on to star in Shogun, didn't he? And then the reason is the new Shogun a remake of that Shogun, or is this a different thing with the same?
It's adapting the same story, the James Clavell story. Yeah.
And obviously, I think he getting the Emmys for it. What's his name? I've forgotten.
Yes.
What's his name?
I don't know.
Who turns up and is awesome in everything.
Yeah. This is Hiroyuki Sanada. That's the
Yeah.
one. Oh, I could see the face, and I couldn't remember the
Yes.
name because everyone knows him from all these things, and I know him as getting like attacked by Sadako crawling out the TV and Ring. It's like he does all these other things, and then I found out he's him. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But yeah, so he does all these things in the 40s and 49, and then eventually, I think, on the international stage, breaks through realistically with Rashomon.
Yeah. And
yeah.
Rashomon, I mean, it's regarded as one of the best films ever made. Although it's funny, I wouldn't say it's his best film.
No, I wouldn't.
I don't know. It's top 5. But I mean, I like it a lot. I watched it for the first time, I don't know, maybe a decade ago, and didn't remember a ton other than like the sort of the narrative trope, which now is the Rashomon effect.
I was going to say, when you have an entire effect named after your film, you're doing well.
Yeah, well, the good do well in film.
Yeah, and I think of his like big samurai films, I personally prefer Seven Samurai and Hidden Fortress to Rashomon. But Rashomon's really interesting. You know, it's there's a lot to talk about in it. But I also think the other 2 films we're going to be talking about today are both better than Rashomon. But
yeah, whenever I think of Kurosawa, he always gets sort of conflated with Kubrick in my mind, and I think that has to do with the amount of just adaptations they have. You know, he based Rashomon on an experimental either story or short story, I don't know, but he got a hold of that and turned it into this script, and just had a lot of very specific ideas for how to shoot everything. The kind of story he wanted to tell with it, how he wanted to specifically make it visual and different from what was going on in the book, and those are the things it's regarded for. And the plot, you know, I mean, very short. There's a guy, a bandit in the woods, and he sees a woman and her husband walking through them, and something happens. The guy, the husband, ends up dead, and the film is about sorting out those details, everybody's different stories, and trying to get at what happened, who killed him.
What happens in the glade is the question, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's told in a frame.
It's weird you bringing up Kubrick, because sorry, I think we've got a little bit of lag, so if we talk over each other, I apologize. But it's weird you bringing up Kubrick, because I actually think that this is almost weirdly, and the influence comes in throughout other things, it's almost like a samurai version of a Hitchcock thriller. It's very self-contained. It's got those thriller-like aspects of the questioning other people. I mean, the Hitchcock stuff will come in, I think, later on. Things like High and Low and Stray Dog and various shots. But there's definitely something in here in the thriller aspect. It just happens to be about samurai. If it was set in a city and it was guns rather than swords, it'd be no different.
But it could be people in a drawing room, you know, trying to. It could be an Agatha Christie as well, couldn't it? It could be people in a drawing room trying to put the information together and work out who did the murder.
Well, and for this film specifically, I do think there would be things lost in translation because of the setting and the culture it's taking place in. There's a lot of very specific ideas about the role of women. And so while I was like reading about this film, I went and looked for feminist, you know, perspectives on it, because there's a rape that occurs in the film, or I'm pretty sure it occurs in every version, or nearly does. There's intent for it, even if it, but I'm pretty sure it's every version. And the woman has her own like scene in which she's able to tell her story, but that is mediated both through the story, which is being told by the two of the witnesses to a guy. They're all hanging out in this, like, I don't know, abandoned building, which says Rashomon.
I think it's meant to be like a courtyard sort of thing for the equivalent of a chief of police that we have in sort of the 1800s.
Yeah,
1800s.
They're getting out of the rain, and they're hanging out there. Her story's mediated through them. It's mediated through presumably male-run court, in which we never see an official. The camera is the official. The audience is the official, standing and going, so what happened? Tell me about this, implicitly. And that's told through answers where, so Toshiro Mifune plays the bandit, and he says, oh, the dagger? Well, I blah, blah, and it goes on, as if we had questioned him. But her story ultimately is not her own. And that's one place where, feminist critics have said, hey, Rashomon, if it does this, it would be better. But for its era, like the things it's discussing and the way it shows sort of the folly of the men around the woman and shows the problems of patriarchy. It's not solving them, but it's showing them. And I thought that perspective was interesting because it's so hailed. And the entire time I was watching, the commentary track, it's not really ever discussed. And the feminist elements are never discussed by that critic.
Interestingly enough, again, in this book by Peter Wilde, I read it. It's a fairly chunky quote, but essentially you're saying that, we think now Kurosawa is like one of the greatest directors ever, but even at the time, kind of nationally and internationally, parts of his stuff were criticized, and the quote is here that he was, for example, he was too influenced by Western cinema. He was not authentically Japanese, in contrast, for example, to Yasujiro Ozu and Kenji Mizoguchi. He was too sentimental, he was too naive, his films were propaganda, he was arrogant or out of touch, his female characters were all passive, he was a plagiarist, lacking all of the stealing all the best bits from Western cinema and films that he'd kind of seen over the years. So it's interesting that even at the time, kind of the fact that a lot of the films, not all of them, but a lot of the films, the female characters are quite passive, or say taking smaller, more minor roles, and it's the men who are in charge. And again, this is a thing that's just in the culture at the time. When I was doing my research onto kind of J horror or Asian influenced horror, things coming in even for things like Ju-on, The Grudge, and Kayako's backstory, the kind of gender kind of dynamics and stuff are seen then. And to be honest, it's 1950. Like, there are Western films not doing much different, So although culturally, it's also just the times
the same
world over.
Yeah, exactly the same criticism was levelled at John Ford, wasn't it? And I think he even said it in answer in interviews as well. I don't know how to write women. I'm not interested in them.
Yeah,
they're part of my stories, but I can't write a story from their perspective. I wouldn't know how.
He just wanted to get
And
drunk with his boys on a boat.
And I think it's just a similar thing, arguably, with Kurosawa. Really, they've got a role to play, but they're never going to be the main characters. They're going to be, kind of in the background. They're going to be there, but not at the focus.
Yeah, and
I mean that's I suppose why people, maybe a lot of people, if comparing him to someone like Ozu, they say in the positive, that he was much more inclusive in terms of making women major parts of his films, and giving them agency and nuance, and actually having an interest in telling their story, as well as these inadequate men that he so often focused on.
Yeah, and there's essentially 4 versions of the story that are told. The first is the bandits, where he says, look, I'll just tell you the truth because, I did something bad anyway, because he assaulted the woman and took all the dead guy's stuff. That's how they found him, with arrows, and he sold the katana, he had the horse. All that, he tells the story where he wanted this woman, he saw her going through the woods, and so he goes to take her from her husband, tricks him, ties him up, or rapes her, and then he bravely and honorably fights the man to death. That's his version. And throughout that, so the music is very Morricone, kind of standard Hollywood action for that piece. And then the woman tells her version, and in her version, she's very concerned with the shame, and insists that her husband kill her, or that the bandit, I keep forgetting his name. He has a name. Tajamaru. She insists that he take her as his wife, and then she kind of blacks out and doesn't know what happened next. But she says she was holding her dagger, and he was dead, and so then she breaks down, can't bring herself to bring it together. And her performance, by the way, throughout, she's having a breakdown for most of the movie, but she does it really well. Like, this actress is great.
Shelley Duvall level of emotional torment.
Yeah, and
yeah. I mean, I say she's easily the most interesting woman in Kurosawa's filmography, basically, because she actually gets stuff to do.
Yeah, Mifune's performance, he goes for very primal. He's like always scratching himself and picking at himself and howling, and like if there weren't like racial undertones to comparing a non-white person to a monkey, like that's what it evokes, but like it's tough to make that comparison.
But I think he was famous for these kind of physical tics and kind of these little kind of moments of kind of comedic physicality to kind of break through tension in Kurosawa films, especially. I mean, he does the same in Yojimbo and in Seven Samurai. He's always kind of feels like he's just barely holding back his kind of animalistic kind of urges and stuff. It's like something's about to break through, and he stalks back and forth. He's snarling at people. Looks like he's got fleas, basically.
He's not holding them back here. Like I'm sure that was the intent. I don't know because I didn't go read it, but yeah, animalistic. He's really going for it. He gets to be fun and not fun because he's a rapist, but like he gets to lean into being evil, in a exaggerated way. And then my favorite part, which I completely forgot. I remembered the gist. I remembered those two parts vaguely, but the dead husband gets interpreted through a female medium. And so she comes out and she's, thrashing around and wailing, but it's the husband's voice, doing voiceover for her and telling the story. And his version was, she actually wanted to run off with the bandit. And so, I couldn't just let that happen. And whenever I was shamed, I ended up killing myself. So that's his version. And then the final version, one of the witnesses telling the story, the woodcutter, he says, "I know the truth." And he, based on the intro of his story, which is at the beginning of the movie, he says he ran across this hat and this samurai helmet on the ground, and then he stumbled on the dead body. And so now I'm rewatching this, like basically twice or three times, I don't remember. I'm questioning, is this part even truth? But the filmmaking is stripped back completely. The fight that the two men have is just a joke. They're very incompetent, unable to fight each other well. Until one of them does finally die, which is the dead guy. The woman, is just, she's stuck in this situation, and she's acting like it. I don't know how Kurosawa was trying to frame it, but she's just going all over the place and acting, as one would in this situation, not in your rational mind. And finally there's sort of like a break in the trees, and the trees and shadows and all that created from the sun have sort of physically told the murkiness of the truth. There's a bit more light here, but there's still the shadows and still the trees. And based on the woodcutter not being forthright about all of this, is he just making up a story? Is this the truth? I don't know. There's no music to it. It's just the scene unfolding. And, what Western critics, I said at the beginning, they say this is about what is the nature of truth. Well, I think this is a postmodern film, ultimately. I don't know if anybody's telling the full truth in any version, real thing. There's only a few concrete details that you could pick out. But, I don't think any of it is ultimately fully true. There's just elements of each one that are.
And I mean, I think that's probably the point. I mean, you're saying about the cultural stuff. The cultural thing although the plot you could transcribe it, the fact that it takes place at the Rashomon Gate, and just doing some quick research into the gate, because I'm like, was this a thing that was around the 1800s, 1900s? It was eventually made into play, but it was built. So the Rashomon at Kyoto was built in 789 AD, but by the 12th century, so 1100s, it's fallen into a bit of disrepair. With thieves and bandits and things hanging around there. And I think obviously this comes 5 years after the end of World War II and obviously Hiroshima and Nagasaki and things like that. And I mean, Kurosawa would make a film or two touching on those points, although his mate Ishiro Honda would make the great sort of
Yes.
atomic kind of film later on in Godzilla. But I think the whole thing is that this is a nation still trying to find truth and trying to rebuild and trying to find new solid foundations. And this gate, which has fallen into disrepair, there's obviously a reflection of a great nation which has fallen in some way and is searching to find truth and not finding any and looking for answers in its thing, a bit like kind of you'll see in Godzilla -1. It is a nation trying to find answers and being unable to find any, as multiple countries are. I'm sure German films from around this time, East or West and things like that, are going to be similarly paranoid in some way. I don't know, I haven't seen them, but I'm sure you will find some. So I think that is the cultural part.
I mean, it's interesting that so many of his films are looking back at this this other time, a time where things were simple, and it was a time of chivalry and honor and everything like that. But so often in those films, though it's a romantic view, looking back at history, a lot of time these men who are supposed to be honourable and have a code, a lot of time that they're flaws and they're just as flexible and kind of morally grey as like people are in the modern era, so
well, I mean,
he always has those two things in conflicts with each other, which is kind of interesting.
In the framing device at the Rashomon Gate, you've got the one guy there who's kind of going, I don't believe in the goodness of humanity anymore. Don't stop saying these horrible things, And this is obviously addressing what's happened only a few years earlier to your entire country, and the guy rescuing the baby and going, we'll find it somewhere, going, thank you for giving me some hope. It's trying to find light in an impossibly dark time that the country is going through. So I think even though the plot you could roughly translate to anywhere, the fact that it's set at Rashomon Gate and the context of where it is in Japanese history is where you get that cultural connection from it for Rashomon.
Yeah, and also with the frame story, like the composition of the characters is always changing based on, who the commoner who's being told the story is siding with. So, we'll have the woodcutter up at the front, and then him and the priest are in the back having their conversation, like, oh yes, I'm aligned with you now, and his whims sort of change like with the audience. And I do feel like the baby is a little ham-fisted. It feels weird, but like whatever. And also, Sam, to your point, like there is the blending of the romanticization, the direct way in which stories do that, but also throughout his samurai films, like the realism of it too. And there's also, they apparently span like a lot of different periods. So, there will be some that take place in like a little bit, further away from the present, and then there will be ones where they have guns. So
Yes.
Well, I mean, if looking a quick thing at Wiki, by sort of the 1600s, some of the foundation stones were reused in the 16th century, so it's pretty much gone by the 1500s. So it's got to be earlier than that. But if you look at some of the other films, Ran, Yojimbo, and stuff like that, they've got firearms. Firearms came in the 1500s, going to the 1600s. If you think about the fact that he's drawing on things that his grandfathers had passed down, maybe from his youth and things like that, you're looking at sort of 1800s going into the late 1800s stuff. So it's
Yeah,
throughout this period of Japan's history.
yeah. I mean, you had that era after Japan had been through like its first period of isolationism, then it opened up to the world again, you know, and had all these, you know, European and American influences coming in, you know, through trade and cultural exchange. So, and again, that would result in a very different idea of kind of what a samurai's place in the world would be. You know, when the world seems so much bigger and there's so many different new kind of concepts, you know, to consider.
Yeah, and finally the international part. It initially was just released in Japan, but someone unbeknownst to Kurosawa submitted it to the Venice Film Festival.
Very late entry to Venice as well.
Because it came out in 1950 in Japan and premiered at the 1951 Venice Film Festival. It won the Golden Lion. It was the talk of the town of Venice. Talk of the, I don't know, canals. And then the Academy Awards in 1952, it was nominated for Honorary Foreign Language Film Award, which it won. And it was also nominated for...
They've only slightly improved their phrasing of that as the years have gone on.
Yes. And they also have the Best Art Direction, black and white, which it was nominated for but did not win. But that's the point where finally he's on the international map. And, you know, very soon, little kids and teenagers and young adults who are growing up to be part of the American New Wave are filing into cinemas to watch his films.
Very, very quickly, anyone interested in a very good film about the time when Japan is opening up? I've mentioned it before, but go watch Lady Snowblood. Great film. The manga's good as well. Very much influence on Kill Bill and things like that.
Yes. And now, kind of the reason we're doing the episode, Spike Lee remade a Kurosawa movie, or reinterpreted, however you want to say it.
Yeah. It's essentially the same story, but set in the music industry, isn't it? So, and in the States, obviously. Just lost my iPad. Right.
Well, Sam rebuilds his office here.
Yeah, and has Denzel Washington, so it's too bad he couldn't. I mean, I guess he theoretically could have been in a Kurosawa film, but man, that would be interesting.
Is Highest and Lowest already out for you, Jacob?
It is out. You have to drive
about 12 cinemas.
Yeah, it's a very limited release.
It's out on Apple next Friday, so that's when I'll be watching it. I'll take out my Apple TV Plus subscription again. I do every year about this time of the year when there's something to actually watch on it.
Apparently the UK release date is also September the 5th. So like the day that it goes to streaming, it also comes out in cinemas. What are they thinking? I don't know.
Yeah.
They obviously don't have high hopes for it, despite the amount
he's hoping Netflix keeps Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein in cinemas for more than a couple of days.
No.
Who knows?
What happened?
Yeah. So High and Low. It's so this is a decade and a half almost, you know, since Rashomon. So he's had a fair few more films under his belt at this point. Kurosawa. So it's a 1963 crime thriller. It was his penultimate of 16 collaborations with Toshiro Mifune. So their relationship was getting to the untenable kind of point by this stage, you know, and they would not work together again after, well, a couple of years after this. They did a Red Beard together, and that was the end of their relationship. Despite them both working for another 20 to 30 years, they wouldn't work together again.
By the way, Sam, what is the actual title of High and Low? That's the English title.
Heaven and Hell.
Yeah. The original title is Tengoku to Jogoku. Yeah, which literally translates as Heaven and Hell, which
way cooler.
Makes you think, I get what you're going for. I get the themes.
By the way, just very, very quickly, between Rashomon and High and Low, we should mention some of the greatest hits that come out, because I mean, there's other stuff that comes later, but this period, like, there's only like one or two that are misses. So after Rashomon, he does The Idiot, which doesn't do well. Then he does Ikiru, which got It's probably the most recent remake. It got made into living a couple of years ago. I reviewed it at the Film Magazine because I got a screener when it was coming out on DVD. Bill Nighy got nominated at the BAFTAs, I think, for Best Actor. Very decent adaptation. Seven Samurai, little film. Nobody's ever heard of it, really.
Only been remade about 10 times.
Not seven, strangely enough, magnificently. I Live in Fear has kind of slipped from public. No, there's very atomic bomb kind of scare kind of thing. Throne of Blood.
Sorry, just straight off, it's not the most recent remake because Zack Snyder remade Seven Samurai with Rebel Moon.
My apologies.
I didn't know.
I'm still waiting for Stephen King's remake of Seven Samurai, aka Wolves of the Kala, the fifth Dark Tower book. But anyway, that'll be when Mike Flanagan finally gets around to season 5 in 20 years' time. So Throne of Blood, based off some really offbeat story called Macbeth that nobody's ever heard of by some English playwright out of nowhere. Lower Depths doesn't really make a massive splash.
Yeah. I was going to say, Throne of Blood, that's the one where Kurosawa tried to actually kill Mifune with arrows.
The only one, apparently.
Just stand against the wall, Tashiro, you'll be fine. These archers are very well trained.
To be fair, though, if you're going to get anybody and say these archers are well trained, if they're Japanese, out of everyone, you're most likely to trust the Japanese.
They're like at Olympic level, I think. So I think he would have been fine. But but imagine it's like having the biggest star in Japan at the time saying, "Oh yeah, I don't because he's a bit annoyed me today. I'm going to shoot arrows."
He then does a film called Hidden Fortress, which goes on to be remade in a little film called Star Wars. Definitely, you'll never have heard of it, probably. Quite interesting. Go check it out if you want to. Then does The Bad Sleep Well, second Shakespeare adaptation. Very underappreciated, I think. Very dark, actually. Very dark.
It's so bleak and final acts.
Yeah, the ending's just like, oh, we're trying to get some catharsis. No, there's no catharsis. It's ridiculous. And then he does Yojimbo and the follow-up Sanjuro, which is, I think, on this documentary I watched, Toshiro Mifune kind of doing Toshiro Mifune things, and possibly with some of the most kind of Western kind of shots you'll ever see, sort of thing. It's kind of Seven Samurai, but one samurai, and then obviously gets made into this really, really small film called Fistful of Dollars. This guy Clint Eastwood kind of played his role. You'll never have heard of him either, sort of thing. So if people have said the run that certain directors go on, there's one or two misses in there, but realistically, in a 13-14 year period, you've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 odd.
Basically, 50s through to early 60s, it's pretty much unimpeachable, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Sorry, anyway, go on. I just thought we should put that into context.
No, quite right, Yeah, so 1963 this comes out. So story is it's based on who did the original book now? You probably get to it quicker than me, Kieran.
Evan Hunter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Novel called King's Ransom.
That's right. Yeah. So he's the character in that novel he's renamed and reinterpreted. So he's Gondo, played by Mifune, who's an executive in a shoemaking company who attempts to take control of the company through a mass buyout of shares, basically. But this attempt is stymied by a kidnapping plot targeting his young son. But the perpetrators instead mistakenly abducts the son of his chauffeur. And Gondo is then torn between losing his fortune and position in the business he's poured his life into, and doing the right thing by paying the 30 million yen ransom because the kidnapper still insists he pays it, even though he's taken the wrong kid. And all the while, the cops, this team of detectives, are basically trying to put together the kidnapping plot and work out where they could see his house from, how he kind of knew his movements, and kind of basically put it all together and find the suspect. A couple of interesting things. I did find it interesting that kind of bit weird, but that the cops straight away they say that the kidnapper will get off lightly because he kidnapped the wrong child. So if he'd have kidnapped his son, it would be kind of threatening the
Extortion.
safety of his family. Yeah, it's extortion, like on a personal level, making threats to his family, which carries a much heavier sentence in Japan. But because he just kidnapped a random kid, and now he's just telling him to still give him the money because he's going to hurt him or kill him, then you'd only get about 15 years for
Like,
that.
because it's not targeted, therefore it doesn't count the same way because there's some kind of motive.
It's like he still kidnapped and threatened to kill a kid. I mean, Jesus.
It's the difference between first and second degree murder, like premeditated crime of passion.
I'm thinking of Carrie Elwes chained up in the bathroom going, strictly speaking, Jigsaw's not really a murderer, never killed anybody. It's like, what? That's never going to fly. Like, come on.
Yeah. I know. I mean, the film overall seems pretty kind of pro capital punishment by the time you get to the end of it, which is kind of interesting. I mean, I think Kurosawa said at the time, after, funny enough, not before this, but after this, I think he did get threats on, against his daughter, actually.
Son,
he got calls, threatening phone calls, Okay, well, one of his children anyway. Apparently the kidnapping rate in Japan was going up at this point, and he actually said his film kind of, and like the giving prominence to it, this kind of story in the public eye did seem to have the effect of bringing the numbers down. It may have been coincidental, but he said, well, maybe a few would-be kidnappers watched my film and thought better of it afterwards. I was surprised to see kind of midway through the film when we first get a good look at the perpetrator, and he's essentially he's got a few kind of accomplices, these heroin addicts who kind of help him with the kidnapping and keep the boy, so keep the boy safe, and while he's out working, he's a trainee doctor. And there's quite an upsetting and explicit scene in a heroin den, which I wasn't expecting to see in a film from the early '60s. It's literally he's wandering through, and it's just these emaciated men and women just sprawled over the floor, just in agony, from withdrawal, and just wanted their next hit, and just, okay, this is unexpected in a film like this. I mean, Kurosawa did do that. I mean, he's quite, in terms of like social commentary and stuff, he did want to kind of put the spotlight on issues in his country. It's like there's a lot of like post-war kind of commentary on how what a shell of a country Japan was, still recovering obviously from what they've been through, and like issues of poverty and inequality and crime and drugs and stuff.
Once again, I will bring up that quote from his brother there, 40 years prior of never look away from what you're afraid of, look it in the eye,
Yes. Definitely. I think you mentioned earlier, we kind of talking about some of these films being like Hitchcockian, but I think this definitely feels quite Hitchcockian.
Yes.
It's like the crime thriller kind of aspect. I mean, obviously Hitchcock did like some kidnapping and kind of police procedural kind of stuff over his time, but I was reminded most in this of something like Rear Window in terms of how it uses the sets, and depth of focus and everything, and how your view of the information and what's going on is kept quite restricted. It's like he only shows you what he wants to show you at the time, and it's like plot points about how much or how little characters can see throughout this.
And I mean, there's
and the idea that
there's the famous moment of them hiding underneath the table because the killer can see them going in. That's pure Hitchcock right there.
It is,
The killer it's pure voyeurism. It's pure the framing. Everything is set up as Hitchcock.
Well, I think he also has a lot of like distinct shots in this too. Like I think of the one where, although I can't remember if they're like the cops or whatever, but they're all crowded over this desk, and then there's like something over them. I think about the shot where they're in his apartment early on, and like everybody's crowded together, but he's off back and to the side, and Mifune is. So like he's not adapting, he's borrowing, but there's a lot of him too.
And these real locations in it's Yokohama, isn't it, the city, and they found this real house on top of a hill, just looking out like kind of godlike, over like the slums below, and you can definitely see how Bong Joon-ho has said this was a big influence on Parasite, and like his kind of literally two worlds, subterranean and removed kind of heavenly kind of modern house, at the top of the hill, so it's he said he lifted that straight from Kurosawa. I found this quote actually. Kind of gave an interview at the time, and he said, in portraying space, Kurosawa is the best director ever. Where the town itself becomes a character, the space itself creates the suspense as various incidents occur. I realised I could get that kind of inspiration or idea for my film. So so he definitely kind of, that was very intentional, just taking that, contrast this kind of literally heaven and hell, subterranean kind of slum, and then perched off the mountain like Olympus, as this rich, privileged man.
The other heaven and hell bit is that there's people with air conditioning and people who are hot and sweaty.
Yeah, because that's almost like the main emphasis for this, isn't it? It's like their conversation at the end is like, the guy saying, "I'm not looking to be analysed, but yeah, you were sitting up there with your cool house, and my house. It was too cold in the winter and too hot in the summer. You never knew what most people go through."
And again, you bring it up Parasite. You've also got the fact that the rain there, so you've got sun and the heat here, and you've got the rain. Well, I guess they're drenched in sweat here, and they're literally drenched in the rainwater there.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very hot-looking film. It's very much like Spike Lee's "Do the Right Thing," isn't it? It's like you feel the sweat, kind of. It's obviously meant to be like a hot summer, and kind of ironic that it was filmed in I think in winter. I think it's November to January. I think so. So a lot of time they had to pretend they were hot.
And to tell you what, this is a thing where if you want your film to last, don't shoot it at the time of year that it's meant to be set in. These two weren't. Halloween was shot in spring, and it's meant to be October. Like
Jaws was shot in winter as well, wasn't it? And they had to get all the people on the beach. Then they're on the hottest day of the year.
So note to filmmakers and any like student filmmakers or whatever, if you're making your films in the winter, set it for the summer, and if it's a summer project, set it at Christmas. This is how it works, and your film will be better.
I also just remembered Rashomon has like a couple of really tight close-ups with just like sweat-soaked people.
Maybe this is the actual auteur signature of Kurosawa, just sweaty people.
That's his Tarantino's feet.
I mean, Stray Dog again is a very sweaty film. There's a lot of scenes on public transport in that. People dabbing their foreheads and stuff.
We solved it.
I mean, talking about the use of space and everything. So they found this actual location in Yokohama, and then but then they also built the sets of the house just to have better kind of ease of movement and control the scenes. But complete with that, because it's in a studio at that point, they also, this for the nighttime scenes particularly, because they couldn't really capture the view of the city outside very well, kind of with their cameras, on the scenes that they made set at night. So they had their set of the house, and then behind that they had a miniature set of nighttime Yokohama. Basically, it was like a Godzilla set, basically like a mini city with like lights on it, and again, just for that level of control, and I do like that. That's a very Japanese kind of thing. It's like just if you can't physically make if you can't find a thing to the right thing for your vision, just make it. Just put a lot of care and attention into making a nice little model and try to make it look as realistic as possible, and slot it in. It'll be fine. Most people wouldn't notice.
At the beginning of the commentary for this movie, it said that the town it's based in was destroyed by an earthquake and then also destroyed by bombs in World War II.
That's they don't have the best of luck, do they? Really. So I found a couple of essays on the film. So Jasper Sharp wrote something for the BFI a few years ago. He kind of saw this as like a nice companion piece to Stray Dog, which obviously was out 14 years earlier. So even though that one's set in like the kind of American occupation kind of era, immediately post-war, there's a lot of like the issues kind of hung around for like the decade following that. I mean, this is the time when the Japanese economy starts to turn around a bit as well. It's going into a bit of a boom. But as always in that situation, certain people get rich, but a lot of society, their problems are just exacerbated. And it just it just widens the inequality essentially. So he talks about how both films feature an antagonist who remains off screen until the final scenes, but their presence is always kind of felt. And he also talks about how this was arguably a case of high art forged out of low literature, because actually the book it was based on was like just a trashy kind of novel, like you call it, like an airport novel now, I suppose. And it had already been like made into like an episode of an American TV series by this point. But Kurosawa kind of deepened like the subtext and kind of the thematic kind of meat, essentially. And he talks about how he kind of throws information and kind of visual information and verbal information at you like such rapid pace. It's almost intentionally trying to throw you off, kind of overwhelm you, make you feel a bit like Gondo feels, just in that situation. I mean, just the dialogue, like the first half, especially, just so rapid fire between like them all arguing. First him and his business associates, then the cops, and then as they're all trying to put pieces together. I mean, I do love how they kind of unfold the investigation, how they do put the clues together and kind of work out what's going on. And obviously you get a great, again, quite Hitchcockian scene on the train, when Gondo's being told where to take the ransom money, make sure they're in these, 3 centimeter wide bags, and he'll tell you on the train, where the money's to go. And it turns out he's called on the train. It's like, you got to go into this bathroom. This window only opens 3 centimeters wide. You got to throw it out the window when you cross this bridge. And it's a really kind of tense scene because obviously he's kind of panicking and looking out for the kids, and the cops trying to put it all together, and they see one of the kidnappers and the boy on the side, but by the railway line. And then you have the other cop rushing up to the front of the train to take some newsreel essentially, which they can re-examine later on. And again, it's kind of overwhelming in terms of the amount of information delivered to you in a short space of time. It's not a short film, it's 2 hours 20, I think, but it doesn't crawl on by any means. There's plenty there to fill that time. I think it moves really well. And Jasper Sharp also talks about kind of how the shifts in location and narrative voice highlight that this is a film that prioritizes social relationship. Sorry, it thematizes social relationships and divisions with all their moral complexities by way of spatial ones. The kidnapper reveals himself to be delivering his ransom demand from a payphone in Yokohama's less salubrious downtown areas, from which he has direct vantage point via telescope over Gondo's house, while Tokuro's investigation leads us down into the lower depths of the slum milieu, in which drug addiction and murder also feature. So it's like a film of those kind of contrasts, constantly hammering home that, the difference in like social strata and kind of life experiences. I was interested. I hadn't really thought of this at the time, but I think I must have noticed it this time round because I've seen it quite recently. But I never thought of it before this. But the final scene where you got a confrontation, between behind glass, between Gondo and the kidnapper. I was thinking, this looks familiar. How this scene's framed. It's like, the plexiglass window's got like a weird shutter and stuff. I think I've seen this before. It's like, God, Matt Reeves nicked that for the Batman when he's talking to the Riddler at the end. It's exactly the same framing. And then he looks at it, and Matt Reeves has said it in an interview. He said, "Oh yeah, I like the look of that shutter. I used it for my Arkham scene." Yeah.
I was thinking with the is it that scene where you have the reflections of both of them shot.
Yes,
When we're
yeah.
talking
Silence of the Lambs, are you
reflections, I was
thinking
thinking
of?
Silence of the Lambs. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
And I was thinking for the kidnapper, like he is featured a lot more, but John Doe in Seven, like just he
yeah,
gives me that kind of impression. It's a
yeah.
normal guy being treated as like a mastermind.
Yeah, and is it this or is it Stray Dog? Again, apologies. I've watched like 8 Kurosawa movies in about 2 days.
that's
Where there's a shot of him like walking towards the camera near the end. It's a fairly long shot, and it takes sort of 15-20 seconds of walking towards, and they've got a light shining on his glasses, so it looks like there's like an evil glow in them as he's coming towards the camera and
yeah.
coming towards
It's
somebody. It is this one, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah. It's this one. Yeah, 'cause he wears his glasses,
Yeah,
doesn't he?
and
Yeah.
and for some reason I was thinking one, I'm not sure if that's cool or slightly cheesy, but they're keeping the light on something like that. For some reason, I was thinking of the milk in Notorious, which Hitchcock deliberately put a small light at the bottom of to give it like an eerie poisonous glow as Cary Grant's bringing it up. Is it Notorious or Suspicion? Suspicion, isn't it? Or is it Notorious? I can't remember which one it is. But as they're bringing it up the stairs, the milk's kind of glowing for some reason. Just as it was moving, keeping the light on
Yeah,
something for danger. Just sprung that on my head, which is another reason why I was thinking the Hitchcock similarities.
yeah, yeah. I also had this quote from Stephen Price
Suspicion.
uh, it's- yeah. I mean, 'cause they are quite similar films, aren't they? I mean, I couldn't remember off the
Yeah.
top of my head which was which. Um, so Stephen Price talks again, comparing this to Stray Dog and the antagonists, and he says, so both the antagonist in this and the guy and the thief of the cop's pistol in Stray Dog, they're both underground men living precariously on the fringes of society and responding to it with profound contempt, and as superhuman rebels, convinced of their own right to transgress. It's not their social status that motivates their actions, but their moral rationalization of their position within society. So, they're all kind of, it's very much a case. I mean, it's literally in the last decade we've had so many eat the rich kind of films, haven't we? And I think this was kind
Yeah.
of these kind of quite early examples of that. Basically, it's literally just stick it to those well off, who haven't gone through kind of what we've had to go through,
I mean,
our,
Bong Joon-ho's done 2
hardships.
in succession now, so
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the last scene, that confrontation scene, apparently went on a lot longer originally. It was meant to be a more elaborate build up to that, and then there was going to be a long kind of back and forth between them. But Kurosawa he looks at it and said, "Yeah, I don't like this. I'm going to basically take out the majority of this dialogue. I'm going to reduce it to a 5-minute scene because I think it's a stronger close to the film." And I completely agree. I think it's short, sharp, but it does the job. It's
why didn't Steven Seagal do that
capture.
for whatever it was
Yeah,
that we watched?
yeah. I also saw that this is apparently Quentin Tarantino's main influence behind the dance in Pulp Fiction. The Uma Thurman, John Travolta dance is based on the dance in the club that the kidnapper goes to, before going to the heroin den. So
This and Aristocats as well, apparently.
yeah, that's true. So there's a lot to get at in this film. I think he's primarily known now as for samurai films, but I think a lot of his crime films are equally as good and a lot of time more thematically kind of interesting. It's gorgeous to look at. It's well performed, and I really think it's a great movie. I think it's in my top. Might not quite be in my top 5 Kurosawas, but I think it's definitely not far outside that.
Yeah.
Definitely one of his most underappreciated.
Yeah, and it's nice to see again a bit like the Bassett Well. It's nice to see Mifune in this kind of role as well, because you're so used to seeing him like the samurai get-up, aren't you? But with his actual hair, and just in a suit, but still with that kind of barely repressed kind of animal kind of energy. And I think
He doesn't have a top knot on, yeah.
No.
And Spike Lee, for his Criterion stuff, he picked Rashomon, but he is clearly a Kurosawa fan and loves his work.
Yeah, I mean,
We'll see what
I'll be
happens.
fascinated to see what he does with the material. I can see it going well. I mean, I've liked his last few films. You know, I went a bit off him for a while, but I wasn't crazy about The Five Bloods. But his other films this decade, I think, have been really good. So, yeah, I can see this working well with Denzel in the lead and a similar story in the music industry. It'd be interesting, I think.
Yeah, and also to your point about because we're about to get to another samurai movie, but his crime films versus his samurai films, there aren't a lot of people making samurai films in America. It's a handful at most, and all I could think of really was Tarantino making Kill Bill, which I mean that's just inspired by. Whereas I can watch tons of American crime films specifically from this era, like, and not that this isn't good, but just in terms of like what really excites me about Kurosawa. It's definitely the samurai stuff for its.
Well, the thing with that is that yes, it's a samurai film, but for them, it's kind of just a period drama film because that's their history. For the US, it would be a western or maybe something for a
you
Civil
wouldn't
War
call a
movie,
western a period drama, like
Yeah, but it's the same principle. Their period drama are going to be samurai films. Your period dramas are going to be westerns. I don't know what it'd be. Now it's probably just World War II movies. But before that, it just random stuff. Like I guess we go back further for medieval kind of stuff or kind of big house sort of. Master servant or gothic kind of things. Those are our. It's just their history. The fact that the reason why you don't see too many American samurai movies is guess what? The Americans didn't have samurais. It's got no interest for them. There's the reason why the British don't make too many Western movies set in the desert. Guess what? We don't have deserts, so we didn't have Westerns. Like, that's kind of how it works. We've got forests and we've got castles.
We did have a We did have a Scottish samurai movie this year of Tornado, didn't we? Which I've not seen yet, but it's meant to be interesting.
Yeah, we steal stuff like Wales had The Toll a few years ago, which was kind of just like a Mickey Tate using Western stylizing things.
Yes,
With Michael
really
Smiley
that,
in it. With Michael Smiley in it, which always makes everything better. But it's like it's again like something like Rashomon is as much just a period piece as a samurai film, just because it happens to have like somebody with a sword in it doesn't make you know what I mean. Like it's just part of their history.
I think period dramas generally don't have like the same sort of tittillating action that Western and samurai films do. If I were going to put a Western period drama, I'd do The Power of the Dog.
Okay.
Maybe not a period drama, very historical.
Yeah, but the cascade now, if you see a historical drama on TV, if there's not going to be any like action in terms of fights and stuff, then there'll be plenty of sex and nudity, won't there? As
sex and scandals, aka The Crown.
Yeah. By the way, I've thought of something else because I was saying how the women in Kurosawa films generally aren't that interesting or that important. Magondo's wife in this, she does serve purposes. It's been almost like the angel on his shoulders, being like his conscience, basically. So I think he's got in his mind where he's so close to kind of getting everything he wants. He's worked his way up this company. He's finally going to get control. He's going to be able to make it exactly what he wants because like his other board members, they want to cut costs and increase profits and all that, and he says no, we've got to keep making these fine quality women's shoes. We've got a name to preserve, and he wants to take them to the future. And it's just this kidnapping that means he basically can't do both. He can't oust the other board members and save this kid. He'll go bankrupt, But she's the one who's kind of in fact saying, well, but yeah, you'll do the right thing, you'll.
No, that's a different Spike Lee movie.
I know the kind of man you are. You'll come to your senses eventually. Because he's arguing enough with his, with his assistant and with the chauffeur. I mean, the chauffeur's basically almost doing the reverse psychologist saying, "Oh, I'm not worth it," boss. And his assistant is kind of more brutal at first, but I think they all kind of come around in the end to we can't need to save this kid really. So small role for the woman this, but plays quite key in a way.
Yeah, and unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for him, I don't know, his output slows down a lot after this.
Yeah, there are reasons for this. I mean, 2 years after this, you have Red Beard, which I think is the last.
Which was, it was the last collaboration between them, and it was a disaster. It was a real trouble production. It was poorly reviewed, didn't make any money, so that put him off filmmaking for a while, really. And I think he dealt with quite a severe bout of depression in for about a decade after this.
So
he couldn't really get anything off the ground.
So he makes Doreshka then in 1970. It's his first color feature, and apparently kind of doesn't have that much of a plot. It's just kind of characters in the world, and that was
vibes.
it's a vibe film. I haven't seen it, and again, I haven't seen too many Terrence Malick films, but if you're going for just a vibe, a feeling, like it's like surreal kind of thing.
Yeah, I've got a copy of it, but I've never kind of got around to thinking, oh, tonight, I don't feel like posting on tonight. 3 hours of vibes.
Yeah, but that again was badly received. The last couple of films, he's been plowing his own money into films as well. So for the first majority of his career, a couple of decades, he's been in the Japanese studio system. Now he's putting his own money in, and most of the films have been failures. So he goes to very deep depression. I think, but I don't know the exact date. So between 70 and 75, he has a suicide attempt, cuts his wrists, survives, obviously, managed to get saved, goes through stuff. Then the Soviet Union call on him to make a film for him, Derzu Azala. Apparently won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Film. And bearing in mind, I mean, this is the Soviet Union. This is slightly distant from the country that is now committing genocide on Ukraine, so we'll steer clear of that whilst acknowledging it.
And had prior to that as well.
I just realised that we've got political situations with that nation at the time where we're going, oh, it gave Kurosawa its things back, aren't they great? But then after this, sort of 77, 78, 79, you have to remember that Francis Ford Coppola has now got 2 Oscars and is making loads of stuff. George Lucas has now made the biggest selling film of all time. They essentially help plow money back into Kurosawa, essentially his across the water next generation proteges that he unknowingly kind of inspired. And I mean, Star Wars is a remake, and plow the money back into him so he can make 2 kind of big samurai films, Kagemusha, which is seen as a return to form, a big kind of thing.
No, just quick on Kagemusha again. Another tale, kind of, it's a bit of a magpie in terms of cultural influence and stuff. But Kagemusha, if you've seen it, is essentially Prince and the Pauper with a battle at the end.
But
it's two identical kind of a noble and a commoner who swap places basically. So
also, people online, it's going to depend on your taste whether you think this or the next one is better, but both very popular.
But again, it's Kurosawa, and I think we think of Kurosawa with his landscapes and his samurais, and has been noted kind of in the Seven Samurai, Jimbo, things like that. You get small groups of samurai fighting, little chase scenes. Now he's essentially got Western money in. And let's be honest, if there's any filmmaker that's got some money now, George Lucas and all his money from the merchandising rights to Star Wars has a bit to plow in. And Coppola with his numerous things when he's not busy dying in the Cambodian desert.
And as previously mentioned, his failing eyesight means this kind of the searing kind of desaturated color as well. So that they're like the most striking looking films of his in decades from him, as well as.
I was going to say,
Return to Form.
Now it's in color. Now he has hundreds, if not thousands, of people in these great big battle scenes. So he does that for Kagemusha, and then he comes up with. I mean, he does 3 films afterwards, after Ran, in Dreams, Rhapsody in August, and Madadao. But I think Ran is probably considered his last masterpiece, his last great work. Yeah. The others are kind of there and are sometimes good. Dreams often gets mentioned. The other 2, I'll be honest, I didn't know existed. Because it's kind of, Ran is seen as the end point of his career, and Dreams happens to be there sometimes. The others, they exist. So Ran, he starts coming up with in sort of the mid 70s. He was apparently just researching samurai in general and found a story of a samurai with 3 devoted sons, and he was like, what would it be like if they were not devoted at all, and they all kind of turned against this kind of samurai warlord. Starts developing this, and then kind of discovers is influenced by Lear and brings it in, and he goes, the two mesh together in ways that I didn't kind of plan for. So when everyone goes, oh, it's an adaptation of King Lear, it's not originally or specifically, he didn't go, I'm going to make a King Lear adaptation in the same way, slightly off topic, in the same way that Bram Stoker didn't go, okay, I'm going to make a character and base it on Vlad Dracul. He discovered Vlad Dracul during his research when he'd already got ideas going and wove the influence in. It wasn't originally kind of based on him. So that's kind of the parallel I'm drawing here.
So it was, I have a story, and now I have a template to put it on. Yes.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I did the same thing when I was doing my MA, my final creative writing piece. I turned it into several stories of like the rise and fall of like a Minas Tirith kind of fantasy kingdom kind of thing. And as I was doing it, I got the idea, and as I was planning it, I found a series of paintings by Thomas Cole from the 1800s, Course of Empire, which were 5 paintings that literally do roughly the same thing of a Romano-Greco kind of thing, and it's 5 things. And so I then kind of went, now I have a template. I've already got the idea, and I can use this, but it's not originally inspired by that, if that makes sense. So although Lear is one of the major inspirations, and it kind of would become seen as a Lear adaptation, it's not specifically originally gone, I'm going to make a Lear adaptation. I think is the distinguishing that we need to make, because then that means it is a samurai story rather than just a Shakespeare that happens to take place in kind of feudal Japan. Don't know which era. I don't know my eras of Japan.
Gun times.
Yeah, so beyond about 1600, before like 1870. And so roughly the plot is Lear. There are changes. So you have an elderly warlord, Ichimonji, who many people have seen as being a kind of avatar of Kurosawa himself. Kind of aging warlord. The world is kind of thing. Everyone's against him. Maybe critics. Blah blah blah. And he's dividing his nation up between 3 sons, Tarojiro and Saburo. You get one castle, and he'll become leader of this clan, and these 2 become 2nd and 3rd. They all start turning against him. Ichimonji goes mad. There's big battles and burning castles. His fool runs away from him. He goes mad. We follow the rough plot of King Lear. There's battles, and he eventually goes mad and dies, and that kind of thing. And the good guy Saburo, who's the 3rd one, he's essentially Cordelia from Lear, and eventually kind of unites, and everything is vaguely okay again by the end, theoretically. But even Saburo dies when it's right at the very end, and there's castle ruins and all this kind of thing, and it's quite depressing at the end. One of the things I love about this is the fact that whenever I say to people with big battle scenes now, make sure it's easy to identify who your armies and things are, just for kind of processing. This is what I think of, because I don't know if this is historically accurate, but all of the armies have great big flagpoles attached to their backs with a banner in a bright primary color, red, yellow, and blue.
Yep. Handy color coordinated armies. Yeah, I mean, I do think in this era it would have like a standards, which for like I don't know if you call it a squadron of samurai or whatever. But yeah, they probably want this. I mean, they did how decorate their armor, but I'm not sure that it's to this extent. Like Power Rangers colors.
And I mean, I know that I think I said the same thing when Tenet came out, where he did the colored kind of armband thing. It's like, yeah, they're there, but half the time, bits of the battle, it's all grey. You can't really see it. This thing,
Yeah.
there's no doubting. You can see everything, and it's just that use of the color, and it's such a gorgeously big and striking film. I mean, even if it's not the kind of the famous image of Ichimonji coming out of the castle as it's on fire and the two armies kind of standing, it's like, we know we essentially came to burn down everything here, but we'll let you pass. You're not a threat anymore, and you were kind of the king. And we'll let you out, and he's just walking desolate, and it's the burning castle and the two colors there. And if they weren't in those colors, you wouldn't have the image. It would just be a blur of people. But and he's dressed in white, and it's interesting. There's things that have changed, but one of the things I found interesting, I don't know if this is deliberate, but one of the most famous characters, probably in Shakespeare and therefore English literature, is Lear's fool that he has. And it's one of those parts where kind of all the kind of the best Shakespearean actors want to attempt to get to. On YouTube there is a version of Lear from like the early 80s. I got halfway through it with John Hurt as Lear's fool. I think it might be somebody like Laurence Olivier as Lear or somebody like that. But again, it's one of those ones, those parts that kind of is renowned in Shakespeare as one of those kind of things. And the fool, because the fool only comes in like middle of Act 2, I think it is, in Lear, when he's going through to the castles and getting shuttled around between Goneril and Reagan, and they're all going, no, you have to reduce your guess, which kind of fair. Like, if you are now in your 30s or 40s and your dad, who's just on his own, is like, yeah, I don't want to do anything, all your responsibility for me and like my 100 guests is on you, I'm just gonna rock up at your house and stay for a couple of months, like, you'd be like, excuse me, Dad, what the hell's going on, so it's kind of a lot. But the fool only turns up when this is happening. The first act with all the splitting up of the kingdoms and the plot line that will be between Gloucester and Edgar and that secondary plot line. The fool's not in it, so he kind of comes in later. But here the fool is right from the first scene, and what you see later on. Especially there's a scene where kind of I'm going to call him the fool. Has a name, but I don't know what it is in this. Hang on, fool.
The actor's suit, like Western pseudonym, is Peter.
Yeah, Kayoami. Very nicely, Wikipedia has got a King Lear analog right next to him, so I can go from my knowledge of A-level King Lear and go side by side for them. So Kayoami, but there's several scenes where his outfit. Bearing in mind, the three sons are split up to red, yellow, and blue, and then Ichimonji, the Lear character, is in white. The fool is essentially in a white kind of kimono, whatever you want to call it, with red, yellow, and blue patterning on it. So I'm wondering if that is meant to be that he's a reflection of Lear and kind of Lear, Ichimonji, and showing off all these colors and things like that. And it's just another thing of him just playing around with the color, and you do get these. I just found it really interesting watching that, and then obviously watching Ichimonji kind of deteriorate with this very kind of slightly overdone kind of no theater, kabuki theater-esque kind of devolving with all the makeup and everything as it all goes on. It as far as a version of King Lear goes, it is one of the best, and you're never going to hate it. It was, when they were making it, the most expensive film in Japanese history. $11 to $12 million, they reckon. I'm getting something that I do not know if this is adjusted for inflation or at the time. I don't know what it would be now. Probably, I'm guessing around 30-40 mil. I would probably guess.
Well, and for a lot of the movie, like, I find myself wondering, how is this the biggest budget film in Japan? Because it's a lot of people sitting, which it's great drama, it's great tension. I enjoy the sitting, but the money clearly went, a lot of it, into those just incredible action sequences, which, like you said earlier, really contrast with what was going on earlier in his career.
I've just seen something that Tatsuo Nakadai plays the lead. He's still alive. He's 92 now.
That's awesome.
Well,
maybe he was playing old like Brando.
Yeah, which makes you think so he would have been, what, about one of the 32, so he'd have been, what, in his 50s when he plays, obviously, with underage makeup, which is kind of, it's often how people play Lear play it, isn't it? They're not quite as old as he's supposed to be.
Yeah. You've got to have some way to go to show the deteriorating of the mindset. And just very quickly checking on US inflationcalculator.com, which is obviously very, very exact. 12 million in 1985, and bearing in mind they'd have been producing it 82, 83, would cost $36,000 now. Sorry, 36 million roughly. Yeah, 36,000. But that's the top end. And let's be honest, we know like some half decently expensive Blumhouse films that are made for around there. Like, you made a film, like, I mean, the some of the production stuff behind this is insane. Apparently, there were 200 horses. There were 1,400 uniforms and suits of arms made by hand, like over 2-year period, which is reminding me like of the Armor and Lord of the Rings, where all the chainmail was done by hand, and there's like literally 6 months where for about 6 days a week, people just making chainmail and links by hand.
Well, it's mostly like just two blokes sitting there with a pair of pliers, wasn't it? Basically, that's just all they did for like the production length.
Yeah. Apparently there was an entire scene, I don't know what it is, that required an entire field to be sprayed gold but cut out of the final thing. This was like,
wow.
Here's the thing. This sounds like extravagant, but the amount you burn an entire castle down pretty much, and you've got to build that set to burn it down. Yeah. This is for 36 mil. I mean, I don't know what's looking like at the box office at the moment, but there's some stuff out there that's doing fairly well that was made for like 3 times the amount. Like Final Destination Bloodlines is probably going to be towards. I think I remember seeing that like Scream 4 was around 40 mil, and this is in 2011. So for inflation, that's probably coming on like 50 mil now, and you shot Ran for like 60-70% of the budget of Scream 4. In the nicest way to Scream 4, you do not have burning castles and like 400 people, like massive samurai battlefield army fights.
And speaking of the horses and all the people, talking about like the arrows being fired at Mifune earlier, I worry about the safety of people being trampled by horses. One guy's very nearly trampled to death on screen.
Well, the trouble is, during this, just very quickly, Yoko Yaguchi, the wife he met during Most Beautiful with the propaganda thing, she passed away during the filming of this. Apparently, Kurosawa allowed 1 day off and then came back after that to finish it off. So bearing in mind, his wife of about 40 years passes away during the making of this. I wonder if there's any kind of documentation to say exactly when it was and what he filmed before and after, to see if any changes were made. Despite the fact that he'd storyboarded this entire thing for about 10 years beforehand, I wonder if there's any kind of slight thing, because that's going to affect you and you're going to bring it out somewhere. So I don't, maybe there's certain scenes where a tiny bit of dialogue is changed, or there's a shot choice to change as a result of this. I don't know. But also during this, one of his recording engineers, Fumio Yamaguchi, apparently also died in production in January 1985 as well. So there's some stuff going on behind the scenes. It's a massive undertaking. And by the end of it, you know what? Thank God it's as damn good as it is. I think both Siskel and Ebert gave it like 4 stars. Like max, they're just like, this is Kurosawa doing full Kurosawa. Like as much as we think of like Seven Samurai and Yojimbo and all those kinds of things, if you're thinking of Kurosawa going epic, it's kind of Ran that you're thinking of. It's the big kind of spectacle.
Yeah. I've just brought up on Letterboxd my personal ranking of the Kurosawa films I've seen. So Seven Samurai is always going to be number one. That's just not going to change. It's just unimpeachable. But Ran is my number two.
Yeah.
Kagemusha is my number three. So he did some absolute barnstorming stuff in like his last decade. It's just incredible that he still had the energy and the artistry, despite being half blind, to do all that.
Apparently, just looking through Wikipedia, which we obviously know is not the greatest source, but it's sometimes a half decent place to start. Apparently, it was completed too late to be entered at Cannes. Had its premiere at the first Tokyo International Film Festival. Kurosawa apparently skipped the premiere, and as a result of this, people weren't happy and they didn't submit it for the best foreign language film at the Oscars. But apparently, Serge Silberman tried to get it nominated as a French co-production, but couldn't do it. But it was nominated at the Academy Awards for art direction, cinematography, costume design, which it did win. And Kurosawa got nominated for direction, got nominated for the Golden Globes for Best Foreign Language Film. Apparently, it was, despite all this, conspicuously was not nominated at the Japanese Academy Awards for Best Picture. Strange that, I wonder. It won Best Foreign Language Film and Best Makeup at the BAFTAs. Nominated for cinematography, costume design, production design, best screenplay adapted. And so, yeah. Apparently, in 2002, Sight and Sound ranked it as 41st in its director's poll. Guardian ranked it 28th at the greatest foreign film. So this is out, I'm guessing, non-Anglosphere. And BBC's list of 100 greatest foreign language films by 209 critics of 43 countries around the world in 2018. It was on the list as well. So it is now regarded as one of the best. And like, again, we'll think of him for the other films, but if you want big Kurosawa epic, possibly this in Kagemusha, depending on who you're asking on the internet. But like, if you're going to, I mean, I know you're going to do, he did some other films after this, but realistically, if you're going to make a bold final statement at the age of like 75 or whatever he is at the time, he ain't getting much better than this, realistically, you know.
Yeah, it's a damn good movie. And another thing about it, so much of it is in wide shots that when it does finally give you close-ups on like King Lear's crazy face, like it's just so emphatic. And I think the first point where they're doing that is the battle where he's just sitting in a room and there's flaming arrows flying all around him, and the camera's just like, hey, here's this crazy face. It's awesome.
I was watching that, and for some reason I was having flashbacks of all films to the ending of Pirates of the Caribbean 3, where they come in and Beckett's is like, okay, we've lost, so he just walks down into a ship getting blown to pieces. And just kind of a look of defeat, you know, and this is like, okay, we're going out here. And the film carries on for another hour and a half, because it's a long film. It's 2.5 hours, which by Shakespeare standards is actually quite short. Some of them get to a good 3.5 hours.
It's also so depressing at the end when the guy whose eyes were gouged out drops his Buddha thing into a hole and he can't reach it, and it's a bummer.
It's not a light film by any standards, but it's dark, it's depressing, but
it's bloody.
It is, but it does have a power, and you know, sometimes not everything is light, and sometimes you need a film that goes, no, sometimes the world isn't all sunshine and daisies. Sometimes the good guys don't win at the end. Sometimes even if you do, there's been so much devastation that's gone on that it's not really a victory. Sometimes you have to show it.
And yet somehow it's still more cheerful than the end of The Bad Sleep Well.
Somehow, yeah. I don't understand how, but it is more cheerful than Bad Sleep Well. Yeah. So Kurosawa goes on. When does he pass away?
97.
97. So what? 87, something like that. By this point, he's very well regarded. Probably got all the. Did he ever get like a? What's the not AFI film, like a honorary Oscar or something like that? He's the kind of person that would have been getting them around this point. Probably not, because he's not English speaking. So
I
he
mean,
gets
whether he did or not, I mean, he is incredibly respected. He's been, by this point, like, people have written books about all of his, like, old stuff.
Yeah.
They're making the commentary tracks for these movies.
Yeah.
I mean, we should also one thing I
By the
forgot
way,
to point out, that he also was like half did Tora Tora Tora, but I think some creative differences meant that he was chucked off that, and it was finished by somebody else. And as somebody that saw that age ago, I'm like, hang on, this is almost a Kurosawa movie. What the hell's going on here?
By the way, he ends up outliving Toshiro Mifune by about 9 months, and they hadn't spoken since their creative breakup, in the 60s. And he, but despite them never patching up, he did send something to be read at his funeral. He obviously was very affected by finally losing his old collaborator, and he said, when I look back on each and every film, I couldn't have made them without you. You gave so much for yourself. Thank you, my friend. So it's nice he kind of left that final little tribute, for just a mark of respect, that they made some good stuff together back in the day.
Yeah.
They were very good for each other artistically.
Indeed. He passed away at the age of 88 on September the 6th, 1998. So somehow all of us were born at this point. Passing away of a stroke in Tokyo's Setagaya ward. Apparently, the final 6 months of his life, he was largely confined to his bed at home, but he was still listening to music and watching television. And obviously, 9 months before he died, he was still sending letters to funerals and things like that, even if he's bedbound and very, very ill, sort of 87, 88. But still trying to keep active and sharp, as I think we'd all hope to be at that age. And what a damn run of films he made. I mean, I know we take the mickey out of auteur theory all of the time here, but like, if there's some people that you have to put in the pantheon of auteur theory if you're going to include them, and Kurosawa, there's no way you're not putting him on there,
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, various types of auteur theory, like auteur theory in the sense that these are this person films, and we're going to look at it through the lens of this director. I mean, that's that's valid, and just is an organizational way to look at it. So
yeah.
Yep. So that's Kurosawa. I mean, we could do another episode on him. We named all those movies.
Yeah. I'm sure at some point we will do an episode on something and find an excuse to get another Kurosawa movie in somewhere. But after over 4 years, finally.
Yes. Finally done it.
Yep.
Finally done Kurosawa.
So there you go. That is that's Akira Kurosawa. But we'll be back with something next week. Until then, guys, where can people find you?
You can find me at SSP Thinks Film and at the Second Cut Pod Substack. There's various Marvel things up there at the moment from me. My ranking of the post Endgame MCU films. I've re-promoted my Thunderbolts review today because it's on Disney Plus now, and I've just posted a couple of brief reviews. I'll be up tomorrow for Weapons and for Eeny Meeny. I ended up doing that because I realised I couldn't do a full review of Weapons without going to spoilers, so I'll just do a shorter piece and let people experience it the first time if they want to. Also, back in the day, I did on Film Magazine. If you want to look at old work on Film Magazine, I did a piece on Kurosawa and Mifune. So it was Akira Kurosawa and Toshiro Mifune, cinema's greatest collaborations, and I did like just a bit of a deep dive into their relationship and picked.
Have I died? Am I back? Okay. Yeah. Well, hopefully you don't find me, but if you do, I'm Cage's Mantle in the various places.
So, yep, check that out as well.
Hey. And it's gone again.
Okay, Kieran.
No. Okay, yeah. But hopefully, you may find some of my stuff in various places. I don't think I've got anything up at the moment. Hopefully, should have some stuff coming up in the next few days. Can't remember the last thing I did was, but yeah, go read stuff. Obviously, yeah.
Don't worry, Say. We got most of the film magazine article in there. They know what to look for.
By the way, just a very quick thing. I said that the RAND budget at the top end is an estimated 36 mil adjusted for inflation. Weapons, 38 million. So weapons cost slightly more than RAND.
Wow.
I'm not saying that the Americans don't know where to spend their money, but there's a mismatch here somewhere.
And you can follow me at Jacob Film Guy, aside from my stuff on the Substack. An article from a film magazine OG, Francesca Amelie Militello. You could go read stuff all the way back from 2013 from her. But she wrote Where to Start with Akira Kurosawa in 2020. And that's where I actually first heard of Ron. Like, I knew about all his old movies, but nobody talks about his new ones. So, I mean, I just assumed he, like, died in the 60s or 70s. And then I found out, no, he has a color samurai movie. And so when I finally got around to watching that, it was amazing. So thank you, Francesca, and go check out her article at the Film Magazine.
Please do.
Yep. So that is it. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Sayonara.
Sayonara.